Hi, everyone. Please turn on your cameras. It's time to start. We are still waiting for a few students. While we are waiting, please share me if you have any questions from yesterday's class or cultural program, or share your feelings or impressions from the cultural game. Did you enjoy Mafia?
Yes, here also in Germany, everyone, likes to play Mafia, but I never played here. So it was first time for me, and it was a very fun experience.
All right. Actually, I've played it a few times myself, but never online. So I wonder how it works online.
Yeah.
And other students, did you play before in this game, or it was first you experienced yesterday?
It was the first, and yeah, it was very interesting.
All right.
Online too, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I'm surprised that with COVID, I think these online games and technologies progressed really fast. Yeah. Do you know if other students will be joining, or they cannot join today? They may be just a little bit late.
Actually, Rian told me that he has difficulty about the electricity problem, so he have now connection.
All right. Okay, good to know. Thank you. So maybe he will watch it in the recorded version. All right. Let's wait maybe for a couple of minutes. And today, how do you feel? Are you feel full of energy for a class without a break to finish a little bit earlier? What do you think about it? It's just today I need to go to embassy to receive my passport. And my agenda is really tight, so I think it should work if we do 2 parts without the break. And if you will need a break, I will ask in the time for the break. Maybe we can do it just shorter, and this should be fine. All right?
All right.
Yeah,
That's okay.
All right, thank you. So I would like to start, and then if someone joins us later, they will catch up. Today's class, his name is Planetary Boundaries for Biosphere Sustainability. Well, yesterday we already studied the concept of planetary boundaries, and I really encourage you to see if one of the planetary boundaries is somehow related to your business, present business or future business, because you can find numerical indicators that could help you evaluate if you have a positive or negative impact to one or another planetary boundary. And today, unfortunately, what we can see in the global biosphere is that every year the temperatures are changing, and in most of the places the temperatures are increasing, and it happens both on land and on the sea, and especially in the Arctic because of the high albedo. So there is higher temperature changes than in the rest of the world. It leads to different wildfires all around the world, hurricanes, floodings, and overall this year was one of the hottest on the record. And these temperatures, they were not measured before. So we observed changes in the climate, in the temperatures, always discussions if it is natural cycle of the biosphere impacted by anthropogenic activity. And by anthropogenic activity, I mean that the human impact, our industrial activity. And as always, in questions related to nature, there are no right or wrong answers. It's always a contribution of different factors. And today we will take a look what are the natural fluctuations in temperature and climate for the planet and what is happening right now. So we will see to what extent human and industrial activity impacts climate. On this graph, you can see on the x-axis is time from the Ice Age to nowadays. And on the y-axis, you can see the concentration of carbon dioxide, which was measured in the air. And since it is a pretty long time record of the measurements, you may wonder how in the Ice Age we were monitoring carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And actually, this was measured from the glacier, from the ice, because when ice freezes, it contains all the information of the atmospheric composition. And by melting this ice, by drilling really, really deep cores into the glacier, scientists were able to reproduce the concentration of carbon dioxide in the air. And what we can see is that from time to time, there are natural of carbon dioxide fluctuations, and it is normal. And the previous highest concentration was about 300,000 years ago, where the concentration was 300 ppm. It's parts per million or milligrams per liter. And nowadays, the concentration of 300 ppm was reached in 2018. So it's been already 3 years ago. And since then, what we can see, you can see this straight line up. This is actually as also CO2 measurements, but you don't see the small arrows because it is happening too rapidly. So on this scale, we cannot even see the small fluctuations. It's just, we can say that it's happening instantly. So on the next graph, I will show you zoom in into the nowadays, what is happening nowadays. This is over last 2000 years, the measurements. And as I mentioned, in 2018, we passed the line. And this mark was taken as a time zero, as a pre-industrial time, so that every time, whenever you hear in the television or in any kind of programs, changes in the CO2 concentration or temperatures, it is always with respect to pre-industrial time. So it is taken as 300 ppm, which was in 1900. And scientists started noticing this increasing exponential growth of CO2 concentration, so that already in 1995, they gathered international committee in Berlin to set the problem and try to find the solutions. And all the newspapers were saying that a great success was achieved between, by that time it was 10 countries, to set common goals to mitigate carbon dioxide emissions. 2 years later, there was a very famous Kyoto Protocol that was already signed by 84 countries, and all media news were saying that it's even better success. We are finally reaching the international global, opinion on how to tackle this problem. Later on, in 2009, there was a Copenhagen summit, and again, everyone was happy that we had a great success. And the last one, the most important, on climate change, it was Paris Agreement. Scientists defined the target of 2 Celsius degrees, that with respect to pre-industrial time, our current temperatures should not go above this difference. Otherwise, we will start irreversible changes in the biosphere. And again, the last biggest agreement was already in 2015, but still the concentrations are rising. We don't see any changes in the slope of this curve. We don't see that it's paused. We don't see that it is decreased. So even though there are many political instruments have been issued, we don't really see changes in the biosphere. So the question is whether we are looking for right questions, or we are selecting correct decisions, or whether political measures, they are staying only on the paper and not really changing the environmental conditions. And here we can think about the luck response, like luck phase. That if you think the car that is racing on the high speed will stop immediately, it will still have its stopping distance. There is always the delay, and this is what is happening in the nature. Since it's been accumulating our initial carbon dioxide emissions for a very long time, there is accumulation with delays the response of nature to our practices that we implement based on the political agreements. And it is predicted that there is already change by 1.2 degrees with the concentrations of 415 ppm of carbon dioxide, and that by 2100, the temperature will go even higher, and it will go higher than 2.3 degrees. And it means that it is higher than it was set by the Paris Agreement. And this is unavoidable because this was this is happening due to a cumulative effect of the biosphere to store and to drive all the chemical reactions that started a long time ago. So even though we cannot decrease the carbon dioxide concentrations or change the temperature changes, we can delay. And this is the best approach by now by all the business companies, is even though we cannot really decrease it, we can postpone it, or we can delay it by providing carbon zero net emissions and setting new business models. Because what happens is that nature has its biocapacity, which is basically the time that is needed for nature to regenerate to its initial state. And since we are polluting nature that fast, it does not cope with the speed of our pollution. And if we slow down, we will provide extra time to nature and hope that it will return to its biocapacity. This is interesting to highlight that even though it's been already 100 years speaking about climate change, the first evidence was already in 1926 in the scientific work that is called Biosphere, written by Soviet scientist Vladimir Vernadsky. Already that time, he was saying that the biosphere is undergoing critical changes by the force of human industrial activities. And basically he already suggested that interdisciplinary scientists and system thinking experts need to sit down at the same table to see the biosphere as a whole, as a system, and not separately how it is still treated by now. Even climate change experts, in most of the cases, it is treated separately from other planetary boundaries. And this is crucial to understand all interrelated feedback loops between all the environmental indicators on our biosphere. So it's been said already 100 years ago, but still we are working a little bit separately. And there is a lot of scientific literature available for free. And as a scientist, I see that there are many evidence, there are many suggestions how to tackle the changes, how to set proper goals. However, I still see that there is a lack of communication between scientists and politicians on these questions. And what we can see that already by today, the difference in the carbon dioxide concentration is already as big as it was between now and Ice Age. And this difference by 100 ppm was able to turn entire biosphere and entire climate of the globe into the Ice Age. So now it is the same difference, and we can expect as massive changes as it was in the Ice Age, but into the hotter temperatures. This is important to understand that meanwhile we are as a humanity experiencing the exponential growth of population and
Sorry, sorry,
yes,
Professor, can you go back to the previous slide?
yes,
I'm just curious, if you look at the graph, you can see that there is this pattern emerging, right?
yeah,
It's a simple up and down pattern, right?
yeah.
At the end of the graph, you can see the same pattern happening. Is it not possible that this is how it goes, the pattern, and we are just blaming ourselves, thinking that we are doing this, but actually this is the pattern how happening. This has been happening because you can see in the ice age there were no humans, right? But the same pattern is there also. But of course I can see there is that in the maximum was around 250 and now the maximum is going up. Yeah, of course I can see that. But in general, I think,
It is excellent question. This is exactly what scientists and politicians is discussing, whom to blame. Maybe it's natural cycles and maybe we are not responsible for these changes. And what scientific model predicts is that following these cycles, right now we should follow the decrease of the concentrations, but we are going upwards. So this is something that is against natural cycle. According to natural cycle, we should go down now, but it is going up and it is going twice up and with the speed that was never before. So here it is important to remember two things. First is the concentration itself, but the second is the speed, the rate of change, because the rate of change is the most drastic, is the rate with what biosphere can hold it biocapacity. What is happening right now? This straight line after the 2018, this is too fast. If it would be too slower, we could think that it is a natural cycle which was never seen before. But this is just too much and too fast. So what we would say that the entire 100 ppm is a difference that is caused by industrial activities. At least this is what we are discussing right now, but you're right, there are always combination of natural cycles. And this is actually, planet is helping us because by her own cycle, it should be the decrease of the CO2. And if it would be on the increased slope, it would be even higher with the CO2 concentrations by now.
So what is clear to me is there is some kind of a ratio. We should not blame ourselves completely for the climate change, but
That's for sure.
But there is a ratio here. Okay.
Yeah. It's a concentration and rate of change. So it's just, the balance, it's always changing, but there is always contribution of natural cycles. But what we can see is that the contribution of industrial activity is noticeable, let's say like this. Yeah. Thank you for your question. Is anyone else has questions?
Professor.
Yes.
I heard you said that the graph is supposed to go down, but how is that possible? Like, if you think about the climate change and everything and human growth, there's no way that it will go down. Even if like, let's say for example, humans doesn't exist, there will be animals and everything. So there's no way for it to go down. How does that work actually?
Well, the concentration of all the elements is always in equilibrium, or it stays the same in the planet because we are a closed system. It's just distribution between these elements, between different layers of the globe. So for example, biosphere, it contains atmosphere. It has a hydrosphere. Hydrosphere is water. It has geosphere, is land. And this is a concentration in the atmosphere. So what we see changes, it's not the changes in the global concentration in the biosphere as a whole, but it is changes in the atmosphere. It means when it goes down from the atmosphere, it goes higher in the ocean or in the land, and reverse. So it is just a fluxes of carbon dioxide between different systems. And when we have lower concentration in atmosphere, it means that there is a high biomass growth in the oceans. So there are more animals, there are more plants, there are more trees on the land that absorb carbon dioxide. And what happens right now that we kill all the animals in the sea and we deforestate land. So instead of being accumulated, carbon is released to the atmosphere. So this is just always reaching some balance, and the balance is entire ecosystem. So when we don't think about the biodiversity, when we try to solve the problems of climate change, these solutions can help the climate change because biodiversity and trees, these are the parts of the ecosystem that take active part in the entire balance of carbon in the globe. Did I answer your question?
Yes, but doesn't that mean that humans are at fault for the higher concentrations of carbon dioxide?
Yes, to some extent, yes. And this extent is big. We are not saying that there is fault of one. It's always a combination of factors. So there is a big contribution of human, and it is as big as 100 ppm. This is enormous. Yeah.
I see. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. All right. So here you can see on the right the pie chart, which demonstrates how we use land, and that by now approximately only half of the planet is remained in its natural state, while 24% is used for growing the cattle, for food production. 12% is for agriculture, 9% is for wood, and only 3% for cities. So this demonstrates that although cities are big and they are growing fast, meat production and crops production still have the highest impact on the change of land and change of all the parameters that relate to land. Imagine, for example, the color of the land is changed when we have grass. It is green, so it absorbs the heat. But when we cut it, it became black, or it absorbs either higher heat or it reflects heat. So it completely changes the radiation fluxes from the surface of the land. So there are multiple factors that causes overall changes in temperatures, and the biodiversity and the land use are one of the key ones. On this diagram, you can see the over time, the change of human population, and we can see that right now there is an exponential growth, and that by 2100, we expect already about 11 billion people on the planet. And this is demonstrated by green color. But what you can see by violet line is it is a growth rate which is decreasing now. It means that the death is higher nowadays than it was, for example, in 1950s. And scientists say that, for example, in the early times, the population was limited by high death, by high mortality, but now it is not the problem. We have all the medicine to help us not to die, but there is another problem: is low fertility. So there are less babies. It could be due to birth control, it could be due to education, but it also could be due to environmental conditions that nowadays we cannot produce, we cannot give birth as much as we used to due to toxic and different pollution in the air and in the water. So even though the total global population is increasing, the growth rate is decreasing, which means that something is going wrong. And in science, we used to see this exponential growth in the beginning of any life. So this is an example of bacteria. I worked with bacteria in my PhD, so it's an interesting comparison of humans to bacteria, but this is basically their life in a limited or in closed system. That in the beginning, there is a time, it's called lag phase, when the microorganisms or organisms like humans, they adapt to environmental conditions. Once we adapt it, we start using massively, extensively the sources that we have. And for people is water, food, and air. So that there is exponential logarithmic phase, and it is increasing very rapidly, the total concentration of the organisms. But due to the limitations of the systems, because it is a closed system, there is an end of the growth. And our planet is also a closed system because we don't get new water or nutrients from the space. Whatever we have on our planet is just changed between the different systems, like I told you, hydrosphere, geosphere, atmosphere, but it is limited. So what we may expect is that the next phase will be stationary phase, where there will be not enough resources to support growth, which finally will lead to the death phase. And in terms of the amount of happy value life organisms, is that in the beginning there are leaf cells, then in the exponential growth it is all the cells are alive, and then in the stationary phase there is accumulation of death, and by the end basically it is the ratio between the dead and live cells. So there is a problem that in the political agenda, sometimes we ignore the behavior of exponential growth, because we see the increase and we think that it will last forever. But in nature, we can see that there are limits to growth, and we need to respect those limits, and we need to understand the law of exponential growth. I don't know if you worked with exponential or logarithmic curves. I just want to explain here a very simple example, what it means. For example, imagine a lake, and it has beautiful flowers, lilies, and there is one flower at the first day. And we know that in 30 days, entire surface of the lake will be covered by lilies. And we know that every day there is a double in concentration. So normally, if we translate it to the business and politics decisions, we know that panic starts only when we see the problem. And we see the problem normally when it is about half covered of the surface. This is allegory, but it means that when we see the problem, we start acting. So the question is, in what day half of the lake will be filled with flowers, if in total it takes 30 days? Maybe you can write in the chat your guess on which day half of the lake will be covered by lilies, if in total it takes 30 days to cover entire lake. Oops. And here you can see that the concentration is doubling every time. Every day there is a double, there is twice more. Okay. We have one answer. Anyone else? Okay. Anyone else? Just try your guesses, okay? All right, thank you. All right, so we have different transfers. And think about it, that if on the first day you have 1 flower, on the second day you have 2 flowers. On the third day you have already 4, and on the fifth you have 8. So it's doubling every time, and it means if in total it takes 30 days, on 29th day it will be half, and already on the 30th days it will be the second half. So it means that there is only 1 day to take a decision to help the lake. And this is what happens with the political agenda, that it suddenly becomes too late to act. And this is can be solved by improving the communication between scientists and decision makers. Myself being scientist, I see that there is a lot of information which is not being accepted or acknowledged, because the problem doesn't seem that problematic, but nature works in logarithmic scale, and we can see that maybe it will become suddenly too late to take the decision. And as 100 years ago, Vernadsky was already saying that we are changing the biosphere to irreversible point. 100 years later, we are still designing limited solutions for these changes. So what I would like you to remember from this course is that always we need to apply systems thinking and never decide if only one solution is correct or another one solution is correct. There are factors as well as solutions. So it is, every decision shall be the context specific to environmental conditions and to culture. But we will see a few examples with Tesla, for example, today, later in the class. What is happening right now is that first, it was, I think, well, when was it? It was published in 2020 that air pollution was first time listed as a cause of death in Britain. And there was a 7-year fight between how to write, between the authorities, what to write in the death certificate, because environment is normally not blamed for the death. But in this case, air pollution was officially listed among the causes of death. And actually, as sad as it sounds, it helped to set new goals for the entire country. And they set a decision to change for fuel in cars by 2030. And on one side, it might be a great achievement to go for electric cars like Tesla or other cars. But it is crucial to remember what are the other conditions of environment and culture. What is the source of electricity in this country? And where we would take all the raw materials to build these cars. So all this has to be taken into consideration before setting ambitious goals for the entire country. And here is the map for the air pollution and death from air pollution on both indoor and outdoor. Because you know, indoor is like in our homes, we can also experience bad air quality due to construction materials. There could be radioactive radon in the walls, in the cement. That's why it's really a good idea to open your windows as many times as possible if the air outside is clean. So this is both indoor and outdoor. And overall, the air pollution causes about 16% death worldwide, which is actually more than death from diseases, the most famous ones like malaria, HIV, tuberculosis. And if we imagine this is about like 2,000 airplanes crashing every hour, like during this class. So air pollution is to some extent being monitored, but not always respected as a as a driver for changes. And if you here you can see the number of deaths by risk factor, which is calculated. So, for example, high blood pressure has the highest risk factor for death. But for example, if you're using drugs, it is much less than if you are living in the polluted city. So this is something to consider, how each of us is impacting city air quality and also how we are impacted by this. So as we mentioned earlier, we can speak about Tesla as an example of a role model for sustainability, and there are always good benefits looking at the examples, and we can find some most. And with Tesla, I'm pretty sure that most of you have heard about this company, so I won't spend time on going into how good the company is. I will just highlight some concerns that scientists have about this company, claiming being responsible and sustainable. And for example, the sustainability researcher, he is saying that Tesla can really solve the sustainability challenges, but not in the way it is doing right now. So let's take a look what is wrong right now. And first of all, it is the raw materials that are used to produce cars. They're not efficient designs of this. Well, it is eco-design. We will talk about it in a later lectures within the circular economy lecture, but we will see that the goal to be sustainable is to use efficiently raw materials that we have to produce less waste. And in case of Tesla, they're wasting 40% of the raw materials. And for example, Ford is wasting less, and it has target to waste 0% of waste materials. Also, electricity grid, for example, as I told you, in the States, 77% of electricity comes from petroleum, natural gas, and coal. So if you think if we dramatically increase the number of electric cars that require much more electricity from dirty energy sources, it is maybe solve the problem at the location where the car is driven, but not at the scale of the city or of the country. So it is more like translocation of the pollution, but it's not the solution of the problem. Thirdly, it's waste. Electronic waste is really hard to recycle. For example, you know, the electronic waste like batteries, you are not supposed to throw them away to the bins, waste bins, because they're also toxic. And in terms of the electronic waste, only 30% can be recycled. Whereas in the regular cars, the recyclability is much higher, is 80%. And as I mentioned, due to a lot of electronics, there are heavy metals and electricity from this kind of waste. What else? From the social point of view, there is sometimes issues with safety of workers. And there have been many reports saying that there are injuries in the factories for fast production to produce as many cars as possible during short time. And there were a lot of like news in the media saying that it is against of social rights, so that it created a big PR move. But finally, the reviewers said that it was not implemented. So the problems remain still on the social rights. There is a force to workers to join some social community unions, some environmental community unions, and this is also not sustainable, forcing your employees to be sustainable. The sustainability shall grow from the understanding and from the education, from the higher purpose, and not to be forced. So instead of going to education of staff, they force them to join different unions, and this is not sustainable. And finally, they are using the raw materials for batteries that are blamed to be from conflict zones, like lithium from Bolivia. And right now, I would like to ask you to write in the chat 1 if it is yes and 0 it is not. If you know what is the conflict raw materials or raw materials from conflict zones. All right, we have yes. All right, so most of you haven't heard. And just to briefly mention you that conflict could be social. For example, it could be child labor, or it could be cheap labor that employees don't get enough payments, or it could be even the conflicts between I'm sorry, the conflicts on the with armies. Right now, I would like to show you one example that is related to the conflict zones and raw materials mining, just for you to understand that every product, if it is electronic, it contains metals. And it is really important to understand that there is entire supply chain, and you are responsible for the source of these metals. And the example that I will show you is for the mobile phone, because each of us has a mobile phone. So I thought that this would be a good example to watch. I will show you a video. It is 3 minutes. And it will explain you. Just a second. It will explain you that in our phones, we have this vibration mode, and this is thanks to the that is mined in different areas. So right now you will see how it is being mined and how it is being used in the phone. Before I start the video, tell me if you see the blue screen right now. Yeah, good. And if you hear the sound.
Here's Laura Harrison, who works in the value chain team at Fairphone. This is Rwanda, a country located in the Great Lakes region in Africa. Rich in natural resources, it's also classified as a high-risk conflict area. These natural resources are an essential part of producing some of our everyday products, especially electronics.
The small part that you see here, it makes your phone shake, and that's made of tungsten from here.
This is a look into the process of mining tungsten before it goes into the Fairphone 2 supply chain. But first, what is tungsten? Tungsten, also known as wolframite, is a chemical element with the symbol W and atomic number 74. Because it is such a heavy metal, it works really well as a counterweight to make your phone vibrate. Fairphone is working with partners to trace the materials in our phone and to source them conflict-free or fair trade as much as possible. Our next step is to source conflict-free tungsten. Conflict-free get our here to help pack the certified powder. This will be used for the counterweight in the vibration motor. That's the heavy metal you can see vibrating in the Fairphone 2.
All right. So the Fairphone is one of the sustainable companies that you can check after the class. They apply different models how to be sustainable. And for example, one of the really important question to them is where they mine the critical raw materials for phones. And we continue with the presentation. All right, so what is about the financial part of the Tesla that is questionable in terms of the sustainability is that it depends on the expensive infrastructure. It requires billions of dollars of investment into new charging stations, new type of electricity generation, and new technologies for long distance and heavy transport. And also there is issue that Tesla is producing the carbon credits that is selling to other companies to prove to compensate their carbon dioxide emissions. I don't know if you have heard about carbon offsetting, but we will have a very detailed and dedicated lecture next week on that. It is that every company has its own carbon footprint. And right now, in order to get investment, you need to prove that you have either zero net emissions or you have net positive. So what companies do who cannot reduce their carbon dioxide emissions, they can buy credits of carbon offsetting by other companies who claim to be sustainable. So for example, Tesla has these credits to sell to any other big oil companies or any kind of transport companies to claim compensate the carbon. But unfortunately, even though it is a beautiful economic model, this does not change any problem to biosphere, to real concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And moreover, Tesla sells these tax credits, which it gets from the government for free. So this is how it is called, money made from air, literally, because government gives artificial imaginary credits to Tesla that Tesla can sell for real money, and it got revenue more than $1 billion in 2021 when all world is recovering from the COVID. So this income is considered to be unsustainable in terms of the economic model of the company. Yeah, someone has question? No? All right, so what Tesla can do, actually it can do a lot because it is very popular, it has a lot of funding, so it has a lot of impact to society and to technologies. So for example, it can support environmental commitments at the governmental level and to support Paris Climate Change Agreement or other initiatives just to be a role model to follow for other businesses. It can be also initiative in going ahead of regulations. Again, we can see that there is a lot of find from science, but which are still waiting for their approval by politicians. So we need some companies who can be brave to to become a role model to follow. And of course, as we mentioned, since there are problems with raw materials that are used to build these cars, Tesla can look for more sustainable supply chain and support conflict-free raw materials. And in terms of the innovation, of course, the design shall be changed to avoid 30% of waste. So we will see in one of the classes the simple concept what each of you can use how to make your product more sustainable. This is by applying eco-design. So it will reduce the cost of raw materials, and at the same time it will produce less waste. And what Tesla can do is not only look at the product as a car, but to look at the entire transportation system. So it can improve transport infrastructure, improve local roads, and it will also be very considered sustainable model for the company. All right. And just an examples that when we speak about electric cars, it should be really considered specifically to a brand. So every company has its own benefits and flaws and drawbacks. And for example, some of these cars, Renault, BMW, Chevy Volt, they're considered to be more sustainable electric cars than Tesla. But again, it depends on the country where you will be using Tesla, for example, for electricity source and etc. So the key conclusion here is that to be sustainable, there shouldn't be generalizations like to use renewable energy sources or to use electric cars. It should be really considered context specific to local community of people, culture, and environmental conditions. Again, I will be repeating it all the time because there is no a single formula how to be sustainable. Here, maybe before going there, I would like to take a 5 minutes break. Is it okay for you? Is it okay? Yeah? All right,
Yes.
then let's meet in 5 minutes. Okay, see you soon. that we already covered?
So far, so good.
All right, but I hope this example will help you to get a bigger picture or way of thinking on the sustainability of famous companies, that at some point they claim to be sustainable, and it is true. To some extent, they cover sustainable development goals and they can be really beneficial. But the problem with sustainability is that we need to be aware of multiple factors at the same time. And just being good at one thing does not make it sustainable. So this is a complicated journey for all of the businessmen, and to make sure that all kinds of aspects are covered in this sustainable way. All right, so now we continue with the presentation, and here I would like to introduce you the donut economy. This is a concept that describes a combination of planetary boundaries that you can see here as on the outer sphere of the circle. You can see climate change, you can see ocean acidification, chemical pollution, nitrogen and phosphorus loading. So these are the planetary boundaries that we already have seen. And by red and gray signs, you can see if the value by today is beyond the boundary or it's below. So this is a combination. This is a new economy that is suggested by Kate Raworth that shall consider both planetary boundaries and also social aspects. And the social aspects you can see inside of the circle. It is basically what we need is water, food, health, education, income and work, peace and justice, political voice, social equity, gender equality, housing networks, and energy. So these considered to be limits for society to throw. And the outer sphere is environmental boundaries and inner sphere is social foundation. And ideally, the business shall stay within this inner space in between, so that it is called donut economy, because if you do not consider social dimension, you fall into the hole inside. If you ignore the environmental boundaries, you fall outside. So the idea for the business is to remain within this inner space. And what is important is that by suggesting new concepts for economy, for the macroeconomy, Kate Raworth, it means growth. Because obviously every company is setting the goals for economic growth, but what she suggests is to understand growth not only economically, but also increasing trust of customers and employees, is to improve equity, is to improve health, and to take care of ecosystems. And taking care of ecosystems is already beyond the sustainability, because when we speak about sustainability, we are speaking about not harming the environment at the best place, but taking care of ecosystems. It means producing net positive impact, and this is what I mentioned yesterday is called regenerative development. So I will a little bit cover on that. And here you can see the diagram that describes from the left to the side changes in the business model. So for example, conventional business model, it requires a lot of energy as external resources and materials, and it is inefficient. So then the next step is a green business. Basically, green business is the business that just takes into consideration that, okay, we have a company, we are consuming resources, we are producing products, we are producing waste, and we can calculate it. So the green company is not necessarily changing anything in the business model, but just accounting for the resources and for the waste. It's already enough to claim that we are green, because since we are aware of our environmental footprint of the company, we can start brainstorming on how to set new goals. And already setting new goals on decreasing the negative environmental impact, this is considered to be sustainable. And ideally, the goal should be to become net zero. It means that if you have any kind of impact as negative, you can produce positive impact so that they overpass each other, and in total, it is net zero impact. So this company would be considered sustainable. But we've seen that the situation with the planet is already going beyond the tipping point of no return, and that there are many planetary boundaries that are already causing big concerns. So that it's not enough to drive business in the terms not to harm. We have to help to restore our ecosystems. That's why the next step is restorative. And the last step is regenerative. So what is the difference between restorative and regenerative? Restorative is basically planting trees in the forest or planting coral reefs underwater. So this is something that we try to reproduce nature by doing effort. And there are beautiful models. For example, you can pay for trees when flying on the airplane. In the ticket, sometimes in the companies, you can select if you would like to cover that some trees will be planted. So this is a restorative model. And what is the difference between restorative and regenerative is that restorative, we're trying to bring something new. For example, new forest on the empty field. And regenerative is when we try to regenerate something that was there before. So we completely try to respect and understand all the variety of plant species, animals. So we are not just planting the same tree and making a plantation that is hard to be sustainable in terms of the environmental conditions. We need a biodiversity to be sustainable, and regenerative development, it considers the local conditions that have been at the place before. It is hard. And this is what we are doing at the company where I work right now, Underwater Gardens. And regenerative, in terms of the social change, it is also very important that not only that you are paying some contribution for systems to be restored, it's that you personally actively involved in the regeneration. And only when you're personally involved, it can be called regenerative development. Otherwise, if you pay money and you don't really know how it works, it is still restorative. So regenerative is a beautiful co-evolution of human with nature. And by helping nature, we are understanding better ourselves. So this is a deep meaning of the regenerative development. And if you think on the relation with the nature, is, for example, we, all of us being a part of nature, we affiliate each other with nature. So this is called biophilia. And by integrating more knowledge about biosphere, we're increasing our consciousness, and from just being consumers, which is anthropocentric, we are becoming the part of the ecosystem, which is biocentric. And we try to mimic nature, and then we try to restore nature at the community level, at the city level. And then we try to tend nature and finally to become nature. So the regenerative development considers the full integration of human consciousness into the biosphere development as a role of the humans on this planet, not only just as a consumers. So this is a relatively new concept, and you can find more details in the book, Monk 2019. I will send you the references. Just in case if you hear somewhere about the regenerative development, I think just by knowing the difference from conventional business, green business, sustainable business, restorative business, and regenerative business, it's already a good starting point. So in simple terms, we can say that sustainable is do not harm, while regenerative is to heal environment. And this is a beautiful saying of Dalai Lama, that each of you has the opportunity, but also the responsibility to change the world. And I think right now in the movement with sustainable companies and entrepreneurships, you have freedom that maybe we didn't have before to explore all our innovative ideas, both in economic models, in social models, and environmental models. And I really hope that this school will inspire you. And if you will ever have any kind of ideas to share, please feel free. We will discuss and support. So by this lecture, I wanted to show you that sustainability, this is a very generic word. And this is used very differently in different companies, in different even in different political agendas. And the sustainability can be political, or it can be scientific. And scientific sustainability concerns the global planet as a system, where the biosphere is describing the biosphere is a science that can describe this interaction between human and nature. And it is a continuous coevolution at the dynamic equilibrium conditions. But the idea here is to remember that human is part of nature. Whereas sustainable development from the strategic point of view is mainly about implementation of systems thinking and going to interdisciplinary fields for strategic decisions, and consider always at least 3 dimensions or pillars: environment, social, and economic. And in terms of the business, the sustainable business, it means that it is a profitable business in the long term. It protects the environment and natural resources, and it also contributes to social equality and equity. So this is a diversity of sustainability terminology that you can find reading these topics. Well, this is our agenda, but today I would like to share with you my personal experience on the company where I work, because it is one of the first regions. I would like to share the website and comment a little bit on what we do and why we are different from the sustainable companies. We are also sustainable. It's not, how to say, it's not, it's complementary. So you can be sustainable and regenerative. It is more like steps of the development specific to different topics. And I will tell you that we have topics on water, on carbon, on biodiversity. Well, before going there, if anyone has questions? No? All right, so then we move. Can you see beautiful underwater picture? All right, so the company is called Underwater Gardens, and we are creating regenerative parks, both underwater and on land, on the beach. And we have a multidisciplinary and international team of experts. As I mentioned to you, the truly regenerative or sustainable company needs experts from different fields, and it's quite a challenge to find the common solutions. So in our team, we have marine biologists, we have leisure, like touristics advisors, we have business lawyer, strategic advisor, financial advisors, coastal management, marine environment. I work on water science and sustainability. We have tourism, museology, conceptual development, which is more about conscious work, how to make business more consciously. We have mainly architectural team, designers, sustainable development, engineers. See that it is an entire variety of experts, and the idea is to, whatever decision is taken, we try to see it all together and to see from different perspectives. So each of us has the voice on every decision we make in the company, because each of us has our own unique experience. And this is a system thinking approach, which is honestly very hard, because it's really hard to find a common understanding between different experts, but we are trying. I want to change the page and show you our technologies here. So what we do, one of the innovative technologies is parametric design, is how the building blocks of the park are designed. But maybe first it's better to show you the parks so that you would understand better what I mean by underwater parks. Here. All right, so this is a image. Our first park is being built in Tenerife, which is Spanish island, close to Africa. And this is a design. So this is a concept that we are aiming for. And you can see there are two parks. One park is on land, and the second park is underwater. You cannot really see it, but you will see later. But the idea is to connect the water cycles, at least in our mind, that we have water cycle on land, we have water cycle in water, and that humans are part of it everywhere. So we are setting the educative activities, fun activities, games, dancing, scientific exercises. We have laboratories, we have museums, we have amusement park, and different water experiences that you can experience, like with different temperatures or density, is to demonstrate that we are part of the global water cycle, and that we are both impacting water cycle and we are depending on the quality of water and on the access to this water. So on the land, the park is more advertisement, is more educative, and more spiritual growth, while underwater is more regenerative in terms of the coral reefs. So that we are designing the corals and planting the corals as a part of the entire underwater forest ecosystem. This is made to restore local ecosystem and also to absorb carbon. So the business model is to absorb carbon by growing plants and animals. So this would look like this. Is the park for scuba divers with different levels and with different trails and exercises underwater. And once you get all the exercises done, you're receiving the points. So it's a gamification, so that you are able to plant the coral reef by yourself. And the planting on these artificial reefs is an innovative technology that we are patenting now, and I will tell you a little bit later about this technology. But the idea is by using biomaterials, we are producing constructions that help coral reefs to adapt and to grow. All right, that's what I said. A big part of the innovation is underwater architecture, so that it shouldn't look like very human design or like artificial design. The shape of the artificial reefs, it is being programmed and calculated to mimic the local environment. So it's both in terms of the quality of materials we are using, they are local, as well as the shapes and colors. And the technology is called Reef Hopper. This is what we are titling now. And yeah, we want to introduce new types of education through games so that it won't be boring and it will be fully inclusive for the visitors. And on the land, this is, we are planning to have aquademy. And I will develop a program how to tell how to explain the role of human into global water cycle, what we can do to make it better. And we will have beautiful setups to see different water experiments. We will have diving center where you can get the diving license, and so that you become a blue citizen. And the biolab, where we will do scientific experiments on climate change, is on water acidification as one of the planetary boundaries, and growing the corals before we would translocate them underwater. All right. This is just the variety of activities that we are planning. And briefly, I would like to show you the business model of the company, which makes it sustainable. So far, we've been mainly speaking about regenerative aspects as inclusiveness of visitors to be part of the solution, as a regeneration of natural conditions of nature, and to be sustainably, it should have a sustainable financial growth. So how it is possible to do by helping nature. And we are saying that our business model has positive impact on the environment because here, through the education, we, okay, maybe this is not the best representation, but I will explain you. Visitors who come to the park, they pay entrance ticket. And this money are used to basically support the research activities in the park. So that you are not only becoming involved into the planting the coral reefs and also understanding the role of water, you are also paying to help scientific research on the question of global importance. So this kind of model that we have shopping inside of the park, we have restaurants, we have different activities for extra cost. All this is designed to pay the cost of the park itself. So in this term, we are earning money by helping to regenerate nature. And here you can see on the left, for example, edutainment is a new word that is used when there is education through the entertainment. And this is basically learning by playing, gamification, holidays with a meaning. So you come for 3-5 days and you have fun, you get new knowledge and you feel part of the nature and feel your contribution. We provide aquatic sports, and yeah, just raising the consciousness about the importance of the ocean. In terms of the economy, once the economy is speaking about the carbon uptake by water, by plants, by corals, it's called blue economy and blue carbon, because we know a lot about carbon on land, like, as I mentioned, planting forests. It is the carbon uptake programs. But this one is called blue economy and blue carbon just because of it is in water. Business for good and social and responsible investment, we follow all of this. And in terms of the ecology, we do protection, conservation, and regeneration of marine ecosystem. We do scientific monitoring center, and we provide ecotourism to the island. So on this, I would like to finish today's class. And if you have any questions about this work or previous slides, please let me know right now. Maybe I will, yeah.
So this park has already started, or is it not yet?
No, we plan to start in 2024. Right now, we have selected the land. We are doing the constructions, and we are working with the government of the island because we need to get a lot of permission, and this is actually a pain.
Yeah.
Being sustainable is what we want, but from the legal point of view, sometimes it's complicated. But what is good is that government of the island, they trust us. And for example, myself, I'm responsible for the sustainable water management of the park. And I suggest a lot of innovative solutions from science that are not very common in the industry yet. So on September 8th, we have, I will be presenting my water management plan for the island, and let's hope that it will be accepted. Because we are very ambitious and we really would like to become a role model, but there are many limitations by the administrative documents. Yeah.
Interesting.
Thank you for your question. Maybe I will send right now this web link to our WhatsApp chat. Or maybe I don't have WhatsApp here, so you can explore. And if you have any questions or new words that you find interesting for you, you feel free to ask me later on. All right. Okay, then if you don't have questions, this is it for today, and enjoy your cultural program. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.